Hi, it's Sandy Wiley. Today we're going to have a little compassion for our narcissistic neighbor. Most people say that narcissism can't be cured. People that have an extravagant sense of self-worth, who are arrogant, who have no feeling toward their fellow man, the narcissist. Today I'm going to introduce you to self-psychology. And if you haven't heard the name, to the 20th century psychoanalyst Heinz Kohut. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Heinz Kohut and self-psychology. Empathy is the most important therapeutic tool in self-psychology because, according to Heinz Kohut, it can help undo some of the damage caused by unmet developmental needs. Kohut argues that empathy in itself can have healing effects, but also notes that empathy can be used as an intellectual tool that gains a client's trust, thus allowing the therapist to gain more useful information. And he has these ways of gaining that information through self-objects, which are objects that an individual experiences as being part of themselves. For example, the infant sees the mom as a self-object, as an extension of themselves. An infant or a young baby thinks that mommy is part of them. That's why when mommy leaves, the baby screams and cries because it feels like it's losing part of itself. Twinship is a desire to feel similar to other human beings, that me and you are alike. Me and you are in this together. It's me and you against this cruel world. That's what the twinship is referring to. Now, there's a lot more about self-psychology. In fact, my former psychologist, Dr. Richard, guys, you can look him up. He's one of the leading renowned self-psychologists in the Boston area. But today I'm going to talk more about narcissism and how self-psychology can help narcissistic people. I know a lot of people have come on here and said narcissism cannot be cured. You cannot cure the narcissist. And I'm not totally disagreeing with that. I'm just trying to get people to have a little more compassion for the narcissistic personality disorder. It's a personality disorder just like borderline, like mine, borderline personality disorder. Now, how does one become narcissist? How does one become borderline? Because our needs weren't met in our childhood. We were severely abused, severely neglected, abandoned. That's why. So if I want people to have compassion toward me as a borderline, I think I should have some compassion toward my fellow man, woman, who's a narcissist, okay? And that's why I wanted to do this video, because I wanted it to describe how Kohut's self-psychology can help the narcissist. And I didn't say cure, okay? Because I don't think I'm cured of borderline personality disorder. My father never got cured of being a schizophrenic. Can people get cured of schizophrenia? Can people get cured of borderline personality? Can people get cured of bipolar? I'm not here to tell you that they can or they can't, okay? I don't know, all right? I think if you want to ask me personally, I think I'm a borderline. I always lived as a borderline, and I'm going to die as a borderline. Just like someone with autism. They were born autistic. They live their life with autism, and they're going to die with autism. But that doesn't mean that they can't get better. That doesn't mean that I'm cursed for life because I'm a borderline. It doesn't mean that someone with autism can't get better. That's what I'm trying to say. Just because you have these labels or you have these diagnoses doesn't mean that, that's it. There's no hope for you. You'll never be cured. No. You can learn to live being borderline. You can, and, thrive. You can learn to live to be autistic and thrive. And possibly you can be narcissistic and not, and not necessarily be 100% cured, but learn to be a better person, And this is what I'm trying to get across, that mental illness isn't just sticking you with the label and saying you're doomed for life. And that we should be more compassionate with people who have these, personality disorders, even the narcissists. So, what Kohut is saying, narcissistic people it's a result of parental lack of empathy during development. The individual does not develop full capacity to regulate their self-esteem. The narcissistic adult, according to Kohut's concepts, facilitates between an irrational overstatement of the self and irrational feelings of inferiority, and relies on others to regulate his self-esteem and give him a sense of self-value. Did you hear what I said? The narcissist is really inferior, feels inferior, and relies on others to build him up. Okay? Now, you might not think that the narcissist, acts inferior, right? But anyone with that big show, and I'm sure you know political people, I'm not going to mention names, I don't want to get into politics on my station. Political people, I'm sure you know actresses, and I'm not going to mention names. They've been in the news. Their trials have been on TV, on YouTube, who have this disorder. But they act grandiose and larger than life and all, important and everything, center stage and all. But deep down, they're so inferior, they're relying on the public, to make them feel whole. Isn't that sad? That's really sad when you come to think of it. Imagine if you're relying on other people to make you feel whole. They never got that kind of, acceptance and unconditional love from their parents. That's really, really sad when you come to think of it. So, in treatment, Kohut recommends helping the patient develop these missing functions. Kohut proposes that the therapist should empathically experience the world from the patient's point of view, so that the patient feels understood. Interpretations are used when they can help the patient understand his sometimes intense feelings about any empathic failure on the part of the therapist. I don't want to get too, into a lot of psycho mumbo jumbo, and people are going scratching their head going, what the hell is she talking about? Let me shut off her channel because she's getting too psycho mumbo jumbo. No, I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a psychology degree, but there are some things that I'm very interested in psychology, and there are some things that I like to talk about and share with you about. Now, narcissistic personality disorder, just like borderline personality disorder, which is my diagnosis, which I have, is one of the least diagnosed of the personality disorders. Okay, so not too many people are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Unlike borderline, a lot of people are diagnosed with borderline. I wonder why that is. However, it's estimated that the disorder or narcissistic traits are present in a large number of patients presented at a psychiatrist's office with complaints of depression or other mood symptoms. So that these people who are narcissistic go into their psychiatrist not because they think they're narcissistic, because they're depressed or they have something going on other than that, and they're probably during the therapy, the psychologist or psychiatrist discovers that they are narcissistic. Because most narcissistics won't admit they're narcissistic. And most narcissistics don't go to therapy. They don't seek help because they think nothing's wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with me. Why am I going to go to therapy? But they might go to therapy for something else, like if they're depressed or they're anxious, like for some other symptom. Ever have that happen? You walk in the door to the doctor's office for one thing, and you find out you have 2-3 other things wrong with you, and and the thing that you walked in for is so minor that it doesn't even really get acknowledged. All right, the prevalence of full-blown narcissistic personality disorder in clinical population ranges from 2 to 16% and exists in the general population of a rate in less than 1%. This disorder tends to be more predominant in males. 50 to 75% of those cases are males. Wow. And of course, the characteristics, being grandiose, need for admiration, lack of empathy, lack of feeling for people. So, Heinz Kohut proposes that in order to understand the narcissistic patient, the therapist must assume an empathic, introspective, observational stance. Okay, by doing so, the therapist can understand the complex inner world of the patient and the patient's inner subjective experience. The patient can then communicate freely, and the analyst becomes privy to what is being repressed or warded off by the patient. Self-psychology, like object relation theory, emerged out of an effort to treat patients who were not responding to ego psychology therapies. Now I'm getting to mumbo-jumbo, psychology mumbo-jumbo. What he's trying to do, let's see if I can get into... Okay, let's talk about some of the things that he believes in. Mirroring and idolizing, okay? This is self-psychology. Mirroring transfers occurs when the shrink is experienced of fulfilling a structure-building function, a function the patient cannot yet perform for himself. A simple example of mirroring might occur when a child shows a sense of delight. When a parent shows a sense of delight with a child, let me just put it this way. Mirroring is like if a child is excited that they drew a picture, and the parent mirrors that and says, "Oh yes, that's beautiful. That's gorgeous. That's such a lovely painting. I love the colors you picked. Even if they picked black and brown, I love the blacks and the browns that you picked. I'm going to hang it up on the refrigerator." See, that is mirroring. You can even mirror body language. You can mirror. Oh, let's just say, like, I cross my legs like this. Okay. Now, if you're mirroring me, my body language. Okay, this brings on closeness. All right. You all of a sudden, and sometimes it's subconscious. You don't even know you're doing it. But when you feel close to someone, you mirror their body language. Now, I'm not doing mumbo jumbo psycho dabble talk. I'm just telling you how I see mirroring, in adults. So I would go and cross my legs like this. If you lean in, it could be with women, men, or whatever. If you feel close to someone, if you lean in like this, then I lean in like this. See, so I'm mirroring your body language, because I feel close to you, and that makes, let's see what he says about that. And that's, yeah, we already did that. Narcissistic rage may occur at times, which Kohut believes is caused by deflation of one's grandiosity or to a traumatic disappointment in the person and what the patient idolizes. Okay, like I have that rage. So if someone I love disappoints me, that can be, that can provoke my rage. Let's talk about idolizing transference. A developing child needs to rely on the parent for safety, comfort, and calmness. In a normal child's development, the need for comfort from the external self, that's the parent. He's saying it. The parent is the self-object, okay? Decreases as a child's internal means of self-soothing increases. So as a child learns how to soothe themselves, then they can have like longer times away from their parent. Remember, when they're little, they think, you know, the parent is part of them. They're part of the parent, that they're not two separate bodies. They don't understand boundaries as a young child. Well, what if you never grew up with soothing, emotionally mature parents, right? Then you don't learn boundaries. I never learned boundaries. So you don't know how to self-soothe. You need to have that object. And I'll tell you about like that self-object that I used to use, because I never learned, because I was severely abused. Whenever I develop an intense attachment to my shrink, I would get a picture of them. And to soothe myself when I wasn't in therapy with my shrink, I would carry that picture around with me in my pocketbook. And when I'd exercise, I'd put their picture up, because I didn't know how to, I couldn't self-soothe. So I needed that object. And what I used as that object when my therapists were away or I wasn't in therapy is their picture. Okay, that was my self-object. A baby could use a blanket as a self-object. You understand where I'm coming from? So see, without going into any more and getting grossly, in depth with all this psycho mumbo jumbo that a lot of people, is going to go way over your head. All he's trying to say, Kohut, is if you use this mirroring and have this empathy, then the patient can take what they would have got from their parents. They can achieve in their therapy with their therapist. See? So it's kind of like the therapist is reparenting the narcissist. So by doing this, hopefully will help a narcissistic person be able to regulate a little bit more, and therefore, have more compassion, have more empathy. There's just so much on the self psychology. There's a twinship. Kohut believed that children need to feel they fit in with others. We all do, right? That's why they have fraternities at college, right? So they have groups, right? So people can fit in. There are groups all over the place, right? There's poetry groups. Children have a need to be similar to their parents. Not too different that they felt wrong, right? Like they don't fit in. And that's very important growing up. You always want to fit in, right? Children mimic behaviors or characteristics from their caregiver, and gradually as the child matures, will be able to feel more comfortable with any differences, but not at the beginning. Not in the beginning. And we talked about the mirroring transference. The therapist helps us by mirroring us, validating our feelings and empathizing, understanding our feelings and helping us to understand and work through them to prevent them from being too scary for us to handle. As a child wouldn't be able to handle their environment on their own. The therapist would praise our achievements and make us feel good enough, possibly for the first time. That's that reparenting. The idolizing transference. In therapy, we often idolize our therapists. Here, I did all the time, as being strong and powerful and confident. We need them to be this person because we need to know we are in safe hands. Eventually, in the therapy process, we come to develop a more realistic view of the therapist, warts and all. Like the therapist isn't, up on a pedestal. They're human. They make mistakes. They're not perfect, right? And then the twinship transference. In therapy, sometimes we will find similarities between us and our therapist, and we will enjoy that feeling. And that's what makes you feel, like a twinship, like, we're in this together, I understand you, you're like me. That's why, we seek out people who are like ourselves, right? Are you going to seek out a friend who has opposite, or boyfriend, or anyone, who has opposite political views? I mean, really, this world is so polarized. I don't ever see that happening. It's either like, um, if you have strong opinions about something, you want someone to have those same strong opinions. Because if you, like, let's just take abortion. Say I never had an abortion, but say I had an abortion and I believe in abortion. Then I meet someone who thinks that's, wrong, and murder and all this stuff. Now, do you think that me and her are going to be friends? I don't think so, because she's going to make me feel bad. She's not, she's not going to mirror what I'm feeling. So that's not going to work, right? See what I'm saying? That there's a lot of this. It's pretty heavy stuff. But what I was trying to get at is how Heinz Kohut wanted to work with narcissistic people, and how he could help narcissistic people by using self-psychology, which emphasizes on having empathy for the person, by mirroring the person, by being a self-object for the person. I mean, if you don't have empathy, you're not going to be able to, and you don't mirror, and you don't, you're not that person's self-object, you're not going to be able to help that person. I mean, can you imagine, again, let's just say your therapist is anti-abortion, and you had an abortion. Do you think that's going to work? If your patient comes into you and said they had an abortion, and the therapist is, doesn't believe in it, the therapist is pro-life, how can they mirror the person? How can they be that patient's self-object? How can they have empathy? It's not going to work. It's going to, I mean, they're only human. It's very hard, to separate yourself. Even, when you have your professional hat on, you still are you with your core values and beliefs. It's going to, see what I'm saying? But that's not the whole point of this video. The point of this video is that with the right help, narcissistic people can hopefully, can learn, to be better, just like borderline people or bipolar people. It doesn't mean that they have to be stuck in that narcissistic box and just incurable. I mean, okay, maybe it is incurable, like borderline. I feel I'm still a borderline. Maybe these things are, but it doesn't mean that they can't be better. I can't be a better person as a borderline. See what I'm saying? I don't have to flip-flop and be all or nothing, or black and white, or, see, I don't feel like I flip-flop anymore, like I used to. I don't have intense feelings anymore of hate or love or idolizing and devaluing like I used to, or it's all or nothing. There can be shades of gray. Shades of gray.